Okay, let's stand for pledge of allegiance. I pledge allegiance
To the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all.
Hey, welcome to the Hubbard County Board meeting. I call this meeting to order. First item on the agenda is agenda approval. Are there any changes?
None that I'm aware of.
Okay. Do you
Make a motion to approve the agenda?
have a second?
I'll second.
Okay, all in favor, say aye.
Aye.
Any opposed? That's open, done. Okay, we have public input. Anyone? Okay, we'll close public input. Consent agenda. Any items to poll or discuss?
I just have one comment that the update on the snowmobile race letter was very informational. I appreciated the information provided.
Okay,
I'll move to approve.
all right,
I'll second.
second. All right, all in favor, say aye.
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 Any opposed? That passes. Employee recognition, he's got my computer, so you'll need to get that on the screen there. Okay, in the Sheriff's Department, we have Nathan Stein, Deputy Sheriff, is recognized for 10 years of service on October 6, 2023. William Sparks, Deputy Jailer, is recognized for service from April 18th, 2022 to October 14th, 2023. And in Social Services, we have Tracy Skoskala. I say it right? Koskela, okay. Social Worker Adult Services is recognized for 25 years of service on October 8th. Thank you for your service. And that's all for employee recognition. Then we move to Highway Department.
Good morning.
Good morning.
One thing on the agenda for you today, and then a couple bits of information. We will start with review and approve a quote for professional services contract. We sent out requests for quotes from a couple different engineering firms, receiving back one from Apex Engineering Group out of Detroit Lakes, Minnesota. This is $425,500. This is for the design on our CSAH 1 project, which would be a co-op project with the city of Park Rapids. And so this total amount will be prorated by construction costs with the city as well. So this isn't full county costs. And then it's a cost that's covered through state aid funding anyway. But if you recall, CSAH 1 is one of those projects it's been in the works for a while. It was on our 5-year road plan. And on our last one, we actually took it off because we didn't know when the city would be ready. They have a major part in this with the underground infrastructure being the water main and the sanitary sewer. So they have informed us that they are going to be ready to go as early as 2025. And if that's the case, then we need to get engineering started on it. So be my recommendation to take the low quote. Apex, good history with them and no concerns with their work.
Move to approve the low quote.
Okay, you have a second?
I'll second.
Any further discussion? All in favor, say aye.
Aye.
Any opposed? All right, passes.
Very good, thank you. And one bit of information, the State Park Road Account Fund, those applications are due November 1st, and I've only heard from one entity. It was the city of Akeley. They are looking at submitting an application for the road that goes to their campground and the public access to 11th Crow Wing. And as part of that, they're asking for a letter of support from me, which we have done in the past. They applied for this funding 5 years ago. And so I don't think we need board action on just a letter of support on that. It's not a resolution. And so if everybody's okay, I'll do the letter of support. And see, I think it would be a good project. If I had to guess, they'll probably fund one way or the other, not the entire roadway. But that would be a decision that the city would have to make if they're willing to accept the funding for that. If they are selected through the DNR, they got to get letters of support from them as well too and go through the whole application process. But that's just a bit of information. And the other one is the LRIP project or program. That is going to be due December 8th, and we're hearing a lot of interest on that, similar to last time. So far on our list, we've got 9 applications that'll be going in for townships. We'll do one, and I know the city of Park Rapids will do at least one. So I'll bring those resolutions to you at probably the next board meeting in support of those project applications. So more to come on that. It's a popular program, so. Do a project update?
Sure, yeah, we have some projects that are still underway, and a couple that have recently been completed or near completed. Our County Road 7 project with Anderson Brothers Construction from essentially Dorset all the way up to just south of County Road 40 is essentially complete. They completed paving and shouldering and pavement marking the end of last week. We've got a little bit of slope work we're going to look at with the grading contractor, who also added a couple of turn lanes at the intersection of County Road 18 and improved the turn lane, and we added some curb and gutter right around Zorba's in that location. So that's essentially complete. Then last week, Sir Lines-a-Lot completed a federal pavement marking project that was in the works for a while. Norman County was actually the lead. It was a district-wide project, approximately 69 miles approximately of pavement marking on various county state aid roads. And then currently, Landwehr Construction is working on the Township Bridge Replacement Project at Lake Beltane. The structure, box culvert structure, is installed, and they're working on the approach road grading, and some slope work and paving is supposed to take place on that street section in Nevis Township this week. And then Linco Incorporated is still working on the trailhead project for the city of Akeley, right in town there. So, and that's the engineering there is being handled by a consultant, more engineering for the city, but we're still administering the work. So that's essentially it, I think.
What, do you know what do you have a plan for the future for the intersection of 40 and 7? I've been asked several times, so I'm just trying to
Yes.
get more information.
Yeah, it's kind of an odd deal. We did the north section last year and the south section this year, and so you come up to that and it just stops. And so we've gotten the questions too of what's going on with that. We have actually got one consultant that's taken a look at it to make, just give us kind of a recommendation of some options at that intersection. We don't like the layout of it, and some of the options that we've explored so far are costly, and they don't seem to be all that effective. You know, we've talked about possibly moving it a little bit to the west for some sight distance improvements, cutting some of the corners of the trees. And anyway, it's just not the fix that we're really looking for. We gotta change some grades there with the hill to the north, and then probably raise the intersection. But one of the considerations that we're giving is a roundabout in that location. They're costly to construct, but the after effect is really, really good from an engineering standpoint and safety. So that's gonna be one of the considerations. So that consultant will look at it. They're not gonna do the full intersection control evaluation like we did on CSAH 6, but kind of a mini version of that review to give us a recommendation. So,
All right, thank you.
Ted, I believe you'd said that there's dollars for roundabouts.
there is, yeah, there's a couple different sources we can use. If we wanted to attempt to get some federal money on it, we can use the Highway Safety Improvement Program. Better than that, I think that's probably where our LRIP application is gonna go. That's state funds, and helps out a little bit with the project administration of it. We would be acquiring a little bit of right-of-way, I believe, in that area, and so LRIP would be a better direction to go, so that's where we're gonna start. But nonetheless, the intersection needs to be reconstructed, needs to be improved, and so if it ends up being CSAH funding, you know, so be it, but we're gonna try and get some external funding for that, yes.
Okay, thank you.
Yeah, thank you.
Next, natural resource, Corey.
Good morning. The first item is just the timber auction. There's no action needed on this. 12 out of the 13 sales sold at the October 9th auction, coming to a value of $271,361.89. This was the last auction for 2023. The next one will be in January, starting our 2024 auctions. The total comes to $1,195,149.95. 95 cents. That's just the amount that's sold at the auction. That doesn't include overruns or special products. So, like I said, no action needed. It's just for your guys' information.
Wasn't that less than what we had budgeted for receipts and timber sales?
So for timber products, we do, I believe, 1,500,000 budgeted, but the special products and overruns get put into that too. So this price doesn't include that.
Oh, okay.
Yep. This is just the amount that sold at the actual auctions.
Was
Corey,
there, oh, go ahead.
Corey, I've got a question. Norway Pine Woods Run.
Yep, that's wood run saw timber. It's missing it at the bottom. I don't know why it didn't.
I was curious, I saw it at 158.16 a cord.
That's 1,000 board feet, so it's actually, there's 2 cords per 1,000 board feet, so
Okay. For about
really it's 70.
79.
Yeah, yep.
Okay, that's still substantial.
Yeah, so timber prices are pretty good still. We'll see as what goes on with, hopefully there's no recession or anything, but as the housing market stays strong, we're seeing good timber value.
Thank you.
Do you think there just wasn't any interest in the sale that didn't?
It's a very small sale. It's a small pine thinning, and actually we've had 2 loggers come and ask us about it, so there is still some interest.
All right. Thank
There
you.
was one that didn't sell on the last auction that someone actually did pick up, and so
Okay.
yeah, I don't know why they don't bid on it at the auction, but that's the way it goes, I guess.
They don't want to overpay, I would imagine, is
Yeah.
probably part of it.
Yep. Another reason this value is a little bit lower is because the blowdown timber sold at less value. So the first auction, I believe, this year was blowdown, so it sold for quite a bit less than standing timber. And then move on to the second item. This item's following up with Chip's April agenda item. It's the continuation of the process for the Hubbard County forfeited land sale. It's to approve the appraising the values of the listed parcels and just continuing that process. And the sale will be held in January 2024. And then it'd be we're hoping, the NRM department's hoping to include the 12 tracks that have been listed over the counter for quite some time. Some of the parcels have been on there since 2016. So we'd like to see them reappraised and put on this auction also.
I was wondering, some of these high value lake lots, I wonder if January is the best time of year to be putting them on an auction.
Yeah, well, we're thinking about putting an auction together maybe in next fall too. So it's something we can add to that even.
Maybe consult with a realtor and see if
Yeah,
some of those
yep.
is a good time to sell and try to sell in
Yep.
January.
So this would be the 10 new sale tracks and the 12 over-the-counter sale tracks. Yeah, and we can look at moving some of them lake parcels to an auction down the line.
Yeah, whatever way gets the most
Yeah.
return on it.
Oh, yeah.
and
Yep.
at the highest
Yep.
price.
Yep. We're just, looking at getting these back on the tax roll too, so. LaPorte's not interested in the parcel in their town anymore, so this will be part of the list. There's also one more parcel that Heartland Lakes Development Commission is wanting us to put on the sale. A business is interested in building on this parcel. I'll have to come back to you and get approval on that too. So, this is just a recommendation to continue on the process for selling these tax forfeited parcels.
So I got two questions. Will you please refresh my memory? So the minimum bid has to be the appraised value, correct? And then, secondly, if a person has a question on any of these parcels, they would contact your office?
Yep, yes, yep.
I'll make a motion to approve. And then, in the motion to have Corey explore, when would be the best time to sell
Yep.
property?
I'll second.
Any further discussion? All in favor, say aye. Aye.
Aye.
Any opposed? All right, that passes.
All right, thank you.
Thank you, Corey. Solid waste.
Good morning, Commissioners. So I have 3 items for you this morning, and they're all related to the same kind of the same work. So we received quotes to do some repair work to the old transfer station building in Park Rapids. There was a contractor, or their contract waste hauler had their semi catch on fire over Labor Day weekend, and we're had some damage to our building. So we just got 3 different quotes to get our building back into working order. So the first quote I had was for to review and approve electrical quotes. These quotes were for electrical repair work related to the fire that occurred next to the old transfer station building. MCIT is handling the claim in conjunction with the waste haulers insurance company. We did receive 3 quotes for the project, and would be recommending the low quote of $787 from Marshall Electric Park Rapids, pending final authorization from MCIT.
Chair, I'll recommend the low quote.
Okay, we have a second.
I'll second.
Any more discussion? All in favor, say aye.
Aye.
Any opposed? That passes.
All right, and the next item was to review and approve quotes for fire-related cleaning work. This was, there was some smoke damage inside the old transfer station building, so I'll be looking at getting that inside of the building pressure washed and cleaned out. Again, MCIT is handling this claim, and our recommendation would be to approve the low quote of $11,997.86 from Restoration 1 of Park Rapids, pending authorization from MCIT.
Chair, I'll move to approve the low quote, pending authorization.
Okay,
I'll second.
second.
I've got a question though. It seems quite a difference in bids there.
We've noticed that, the last couple cleanings that we've had to do. We go through it with them, we walk through the exact specs, and, sometimes there's just been that difference in these cleaning companies. I think the last time we had a very large discrepancy too, and I don't know if it's just that they're busy or what the deal is. But I mean, this cleaning is really straightforward. It's pressure the previous cleanings that they've had to do like a dry wipe and take a lot of extra time preparing for the cleaning. And this time it's, it's pressure washing the building and wiping down the office. So I think the first quote's definitely more in line for the scope of work, so.
Thank you.
Okay. So we got a motion and a second, so any more questions? If not, all in favor, say aye.
Aye.
Aye. Any opposed? All right, that passes.
All right, and the third item is to review and approve quotes for steel replacement for a portion of the old transfer station building. So the wall that was right next to the semi-fire sustained quite a bit of damage from the heat and of the semi. So we're looking at replacing the steel on the east side of the old transfer station building. Again, this quote would be awarded once fully authorized by MCIT, and we'd recommend the low quote of $19,992.94 from Hadia Contracting of Monaga, pending authorization from MCIT.
Chair, I'll move to approve the low quote.
Yeah, have a second?
I'll second.
All right. Any questions more? All right, all in favor, say aye.
Aye.
Any opposed? Passes.
All right, I got a quick update with our construction project in Park Rapids. They're wrapping up the landfill construction project. They've been putting topsoil on the last few days. Should be finishing that up hopefully this morning, and they'll be going on to seeding and blanketing, and hope to be wrapped up with the project by the end of the week. So things have went pretty good. I think I've mentioned at the previous meetings that we will be looking at some change orders related to the project. We were able to cover an additional, I think it was 0.6 acres or so of landfill, which was good. And then the other change orders are kind of resulting from having to relocate some waste that we didn't know was there close to the waste boundary. In addition, we didn't have enough soil on our site is what our engineers had originally planned. So that's going to kind of result in the change orders we'll be seeing. And we should have that at the next board meeting. So overall, it could be about 10% of the project cost is probably what the change orders will be looking like. So, so you guys are aware of that. So.
Then the cover material, we purchased that earlier. Did we purchase enough to do the whole covering, or just what you've gotten accomplished?
So we've purchased cover material in the past, and that was kind of intended just for our daily cover, which doesn't really have, our monthly cover, which doesn't have this, meet the specifications necessarily as final cover. We were fortunate to actually test that material, and we were able to use that in our final cover process. So we pretty much depleted all the stockpiles of dirt we have. So we're going to be probably looking for, to replenish our cover dirt soil before our next project in, the next 3 or 4 years. So.
All right, thank you.
And then for this project, we had to dig a retention pond around the landfill, and we were able to take a lot of this soil. We have good sand on the site, so we were able to utilize that sand for this project. So that did help us to save quite a bit of money where we didn't have to, import that onto the site.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Okay, environmental services, Eric. Good morning.
Morning.
I have 2 items for you, and this is a supplemental for the first item. And the first item is a conditional use application 2CU23 by Nathan and Mitchell Luigi. They're asking approval for a conditional use permit to operate a recreational vehicle campground on a non-riparian lot located in the 1,000-foot shoreland area of Fifth Crowing Lake on the west side of the lake. They went to the Planning Commission at the last meeting, and the Planning Commission recommended approval of the application with 5 recommended conditions. And then my apologies for the handout, but it just dawned on me this morning as I was reading through everything that the Commission's recommendation did not include a condition that would document and lock in the number of dwellings that were being requested, which is a standard practice with a conditional use permit. So to that end, I drafted a proposed 6th condition that would specify that the approval is for the number of sites that are in place in the shoreline area, which is the sites that were requested in the application, and that if they wanted to expand in shoreland, which is possible with the space that they have, that would involve going through an amendment application at a future date. So,
But they could add beyond tier 4 though, however they wanted to.
yes, good question. Outside, this is a unique property in that it also has a large area that's outside of the shoreland 1,000-foot boundary, And because the county doesn't have countywide zoning, they're able to expand in that area without needing to do anything in terms of a conditional use. And I believe they have plans of doing so with, I think, 7 additional campsites are what they have in mind for starters in the non-shoreline area. If the board has any questions, happy to provide plenty of background detail. I know several of you are well acquainted with this application and that background.
Eric, I didn't notice any opposition to this RV. To me, looking at it, looks like it's secluded. If I'm correct, doesn't have lake shore itself. So maybe that's the reason why there wasn't any opposition?
That would be my guess, yes, as to the reasoning. The property is very well secluded. If you don't see the sign along the township road indicating that there's a campground there, you'd never know otherwise. It's extremely well buffered by dense, mature forest cover on all sides. And in the closest development to the north, the Rice Bay Planned Unit Development, we have had letters of support and folks that attended the Planning Commission meeting that live in that development, and they were supportive of the application.
I noticed by the picture that's up on the screen right now, it does look like it's got, almost every campsite looks like it has a camper in it or RV in it, so it looks like they got the business. Thank you.
You're welcome.
Do they have a full hookup to every site? I'm just curious.
I believe so.
Yeah, that's pretty well what people prefer now.
Yeah, there's septic systems servicing all the units, and when we drove through with the planning commission on the lot view, it appeared, we could see water and electrical service to each of the sites.
Just bring it up because it's unrelated totally, but, well, in a way it is, but, Deep Lake Park, right now they're considering just a dump station, but I'd prefer to see full hookups.
Yeah,
Anyways.
people are used to that.
Yeah. Anyways,
So
I'm
at the
sorry.
At the planning commission meeting, Ted, there was very little discussion even amongst the board. They were very comfortable with, adding the 5 conditions.
Mhm.
It was less than 5 minutes, I think, the whole thing that took place.
How long? 15, 18 years without any issues? It's just there were unresolved problems and this takes care of all of them?
Mm-hmm. Yep, the Luigi's indicated at the planning commission meeting that they wanted to make quick work of getting the permits that they need to finish things out, assuming the conditional use permit is approved. So I've already visited with staff to make work of going out there. They ought to be able to do that this afternoon to inventory the items that would need to get permitted.
Mitch had originally contacted me, probably in addition to David, and yeah, he said he had some sleepless nights worried about this, and he's sure glad to see this cleared up. He purchased it the way it was and didn't know what the situation was.
So Eric, are you recommending that we adopt number 6 here too as also part of the conditional?
Yes. Yeah, if we, with the conditional use permit, if you don't specify something in a condition, then assuming the ordinance would allow it, then they'd be left the opportunity to expand the full allowed density in the shoreland area without additional review. So that's the reason for the proposed 6th condition, to kind of lock that in. And that's kind of standard practice whenever an applicant says we're going to do X, Y, Z. It's good practice to list those things as conditions, so then you make sure that the use occurs in the manner that it was presented.
And this was communicated to Mitch?
As far as,
Is this being added?
no, like I said, it just came to my mind as I was preparing this morning, but I have had conversations with Mitch and Nate previously as to if you want to expand, you certainly could ask to do so, and if you don't, we would likely say that you could, but it would be through a subsequent amendment application, and they were comfortable with that as best I could tell. because there was additional information that we were gonna require if they did want to expand in terms of getting a survey done so that we could be sure as to the numbers of dwellings that would be allowed in the tiers. And they didn't want to go to that expense at the current time.
Chair, I'll recommend, or I'll move to approve the recommendation of the Planning Commission on 2 CU 23 for approval with the additional condition number 6, and also recommend approving the Planning Commission's finding of facts.
Okay, sounds good. Do we have a second?
I'll second.
All right, any further discussion? All in favor, say aye.
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 Any opposed? All right, it passes.
Okay, thank you. And the,
Cleared up.
yep, one off the list. The second item is our natural resource block grant agreement for the next biennium. And this is a standard agreement that we enter into with the state that provides us some funding to assist a multitude of programs for the Soil and Water Conservation District. It gives them funding for their local water plan administration as well as the Wetland Conservation Act administration. And then for our department, it provides us with shoreland funds as well as septic program funds. The intent is to fully fund those programs, but the money doesn't even come close, but something's better than nothing. And this year, we did also receive a nice boost in many of those areas. Some of it's going to be ongoing boost. In other areas, it's more of a one-time for this biennium appropriation. We additionally also had applied for and were awarded a nice amount of money, just under $80,000 for our low-income household septic upgrade grant program that we've been doing the last decade now. And so we were second behind Stearns County in the amount that we were awarded, which was significantly higher than what most counties receive. So that was a nice surprise.
So Eric, I know you've said in the past that you haven't been able to give out the amount of dollars that you received. Is there some sort of plan of how you can let the public know?
Yep, we've got a press release prepared and we'll post it on the website as well, like we have in the past. And the issue that we had years back with having difficulty in giving the money out, that's kind of abated to where we actually have a waiting list of folks this go around. So
Okay,
I don't anticipate challenges in doling out the funding this time.
well, that's good.
Okay, any more questions? Do we have a motion?
I'll move to approve the agreement and the signature.
I'll second.
Okay, any more discussion? Not all in favor, say aye.
Aye.
Aye. And then opposed? All right, it passes. Thank you.
Okay.
Any updates that you have, future meetings with you, and things coming up?
Let's see, the Planning Commission next Monday evening will be considering an ordinance amendment proposal. That recommendation will be then brought to the board. The amendment was submitted by a group looking to open a charter school at the Northern Pines Assembly Grounds on the east side of Fishhook, just northeast of town. We don't really have a use category that allows that type of a use to take place, so they're proposing a conditional use category for an educational use, so that will be upcoming. The other two projects that will involve conditional use permits that the Planning Commission has discussed are still working through their various processes, so I don't have an exact date yet of when those might be before the board, but they're still progressing. Otherwise, I guess the only other news item I would have that I shared at the manager meeting recently, but so the whole board can hear in case it hasn't made its way to everyone is that we were successful in filling our GIS specialist position that we had vacant, and that individual is Edward Schoon. He had many years of experience as the GIS person for Lakes Electrical Co-op, and he'll be beginning in the first part of December, so we're looking forward to having him join the team and getting back to full capacity.
All right. All right, thank you, Eric.
You're welcome. Thank you.
Okay, Administrator.
Yeah, a little housekeeping first. So, the jail tour, we're planning on meeting about 10:15 for those who want to. And Corey and Joe will walk people through to show them the scope and the areas that are proposed for the improvements. And then 11 o'clock, we'll have Bruce Schwartzman join us to review the project proposal and then review their proposed fees for the next phase of development and the timeline for that project. So that will be, would have been under general government, but I wanted to include it in the regular meeting so everybody had a chance to see all of that this time. And then after that, we'll kind of get a thumbs up, thumbs down to bring that forward in November for approval. We do have the possibility of the general government meeting briefly after that, although I'm supposed to be meeting with Mary and a possible opportunity shortly, about 11:30, I think, this morning too, so we might get a little tight. Very briefly, the historic roof replacement is going well, but not without some hiccups. I don't know if you've heard that there was some water in during some of the heavy rains during one point of the construction, and there was a sewer vent pipe that was damaged that has created some problems that they're figuring out how to resolve, but they don't want to resolve them until they're done disturbing it. So we have the architect from McDonald and Mack will be here on site tomorrow. We'll be doing a virtual walkthrough with the Minnesota State Historical Society, so we stay on track with making sure everything meets their conditions. If you remember, this is about a $265,000 project, and about $237,000 of that was grant. There are going to be some overruns, and when I have the final number, I'll bring those back to you for approval. They're modest, in my opinion, and we'll be able to cover them from within capital funds for this current year. Probably about 10 or 15%, I think, is what the total overrun is looking like it's gonna be. But then it should be done for 25, 30 years, hopefully.
You don't have any grasp of what the leakage damage would cost?
No, I don't.
Is that gonna, when the architects come, will they get an idea?
We'll try to walk through and figure out how to either repair or reconcile the damage that was done.
You think a grant could be possible for that?
I doubt it.
No? Okay.
They don't happen that fast. I don't know if anything is subject to insurance liability or what it's gonna be, but we'll be having that conversation tomorrow. No, this afternoon, I'm sorry, 1 o'clock today. What day, it's Tuesday, right? So this afternoon, I'm having that walkthrough. And then, I think the next item then is the budget request from Heartland Lakes Development Commission.
Okay, and Mary's here for that?
Good morning.
Good morning.
Mary?
One quick item, Jeff, the meeting is canceled, so.
Oh, so we
we're
don't have to
okay.
rush out of here,
You
okay.
don't have to
All
rush
right,
out of
good.
here, so. Good morning, and I know that we are in the midst of budgeting, but I thought it would be also good to take a step back and remind all of you on who we are and what our work is, and kind of what we've been up to over the last year and what we're looking at for the next year moving forward. Heartland Lakes is a nonprofit. We were formed as a collaborative between the City of Park Rapids, Hubbard County, and then the business community. In 2020, we did some visioning and rebranding and came up with a new name, new logo, and also created a new mission statement, which is really to inspire and retain economic growth. And then our vision statement goes on to say that we facilitate innovation, cooperation, and economic growth in the region by enhancing and leveraging our area's unique assets through leadership, valued programs, and resources while maintaining our vibrant community. So it's really about doing things and being involved in activities that really spur economic growth. And then we also came up with a value statement and have sort of 5 values that are really core to the operations of the organization. And it's Heartland Lakes Development Commission is accountable for delivering tangible and measurable results in economic development by delivering our mission, vision, and values with integrity. Through our leadership, we passionately inspire a vibrant economy by finding creative ways to find the right answer and encourage collaboration by leveraging the community's or the county's collective genius. So it's really about creating partnerships. It's about collaboration. It's about trying to find all kinds of ways to further the economic growth for the entire county. Our board membership is set up for, we have 2 county commissioners that are on our board. We have 2 city council members, and then those, if you want to go to the next slide, Jeff. And then those 2, or those 4 elected positions appoint the 3 business representatives that we have on the board. So currently, this is our board membership. We have David Delahunt is our chair, and then Shar is also on our board, and then Ryan Lechner, who is the mayor of Park Rapids, and Liz Stone is the other city representative, and then the other 3 are business representatives that sit on our board. Our funding comes from several sources. Primarily, it is county and city. We also do get business contributions as well as grant resources. And our newest source of revenue is from the provision of services through the cooperative working space that we call the hangar. At our new location that we moved into in the beginning of 2022, we created half of the space to be a cooperative working environment. And so folks can come in and spend an hour a day, a few days in a row, or ongoing to take advantage of our business services. So we have cubes, we have conference room, we have high-speed internet, high-capacity printers, plotters that folks can come in and take advantage of. And as the second year, our impact has really increased, and we are seeing a lot more individuals coming and taking advantage of that service. They tend to be sort of 2 different types of clientele. The first one is folks who work at home and meet clients but don't want to meet them in their own home. So they take our space and they come and meet clients. Excuse me. Our second group is folks who are here visiting, either vacationing or seeing relatives, primarily more on the relative side. We have a lot of folks who regularly come up and visit either home or cabin with family and spend weeks at a time using our space. So it provides an opportunity for these folks to have high-class business services and still be here in the area where they wouldn't be able to take advantage of as long visits if we didn't have those services available. So we think that that's kind of a niche that we can really serve. to help expand our presence and provide a benefit to the community. Broadly, what we do is we really want to be that first stop for businesses thinking about doing anything. So if a business has any kind of question, we hope that they call us and say, hey, we're thinking about, we need help with, we are wondering about, and then our job is really to help to navigate all of those questions and see who we can connect them with that could be of value or provide direct services to them as well, so that we can really make sure that we address whatever it is that businesses need in this community. We also have a role in working with businesses that are looking to start, expand, or relocate to Hubbard County. So it's not just about attracting new businesses here. It's making sure that somebody who has an idea and wants to start a business here in the community has all the resources that they need in order to do that. But then we also have resources for businesses that may want to expand and either add jobs or add efficiencies or any of those kinds of things. And so we have a role in working with them as well. We create and improve access to capital for businesses and local governments. And so sometimes it means that we assist with an application to the Small Cities Development Program, or we go after funding that can help businesses, or we work with the cities or the counties to identify some resources and then help to prepare those applications and then submit those and help administer in any way that we can. So it's really about helping to drive external resources here so that we can leverage our internal resources to make things happen. We want to be at the forefront of entrepreneurship. So we want to make sure that somebody who has an idea really has the ability to do that. And then our work is not just limited to businesses. We will help nonprofits and government, as well as businesses, to make sure that everything is about how do we help the economy grow here in Hubbard County. Some of the highlights for 2023, the most recent program that we've been working on is the Main Street Economic Revitalization Program. And I believe that you all were given the paper copy of our annual report. And if you look in the very center, there's a highlight of that Main Street program again, but at the bottom, what I really want to call out is that we were successful in serving all areas of the county on this program. So we were able to really reach out to businesses in all the communities. And these are the ones who have closed. We still have a little bit of funding that we've gotten. We've gotten actually more requests than resources that we have available. And we're still working through that last group of requests. And again, more of them are going to be in not Park Rapids. So that program really, as a reminder, we received under 2 grants, $450,000, and that provided up to 30% up to $30,000 for businesses to make infrastructure or repair or rehabilitation to properties. So it had to be things that were attached to the land or the building, but it was really meant to help go back at businesses that weren't necessarily able to make repairs or renovations sort of at post-COVID. This was to help some of those spur development that businesses were really looking for. The Pinecrest Housing Development broke ground in August. We did get some delays from the state on the approval process. The permitting process that normally takes 4 weeks took 10. And so we are behind a little bit, and our contractor is really hoping to catch up and so that it can get enclosed for winter construction. And we're working pretty diligently on that. I have been asked to testify on a few occasions at the state legislature on housing-related bills. And whether or not you've heard, Housing had a big win in the legislative session this last year, and there are a lot of really new and interesting programs. This morning, I was just part of a webinar about the potential for individuals to make contributions that are state tax deductible for specific projects. So an individual can designate a specific project and receive a tax credit for that contribution. And so it could be a really interesting way to get some additional leverage that we wouldn't have otherwise available. And it's not federal or state dollars, it's personal dollars. So if we can attract new investment locally, there's some things that we can potentially do on that front. And then also the local housing aid was awarded for this. It's ongoing, but for this year and next year, the amount has been set, and so that's some additional resources that came as a result of that legislative session. We do a lot of small business assistance. I have some of the numbers in the annual report that we passed around. We also help to co-sponsor the Heartland Lakes Job and Career Fair. In the last fair, which was held in April, we had 60 employers that had booths. We had 400 students attend and about 100 adults. So it was formatted where it was during the day was for students, and then in the afternoon, adults could come and look for jobs. And the employers are telling us that it was a successful event. They were able to actually hire employees as a result of that fair. And so they were very thankful that we were able to pull that off. We have partnered with the Chamber of Commerce to do Lunch and Learn. It's an opportunity for primarily small businesses to come and learn about topics of interest. Incidentally, today is our Lunch and Learn, and we have a speaker coming up from the Department of Industry. I can't remember. Yeah, Department of Labor it is. And he is doing a presentation on safe and sick time, which a lot of small employers are just now learning about, and really there are some implications that they really need to be aware of. So we have a speaker coming up specifically to do that topic. We had 26 businesses register for that event, and so we'll have that at the hangar today. I'm really excited about that. And then as part of the Pinecrest housing development, we encouraged that the county create the local housing trust fund, which you did, which is going to be, I think, another very important tool in being able to locally make decisions about how housing is going to be moving forward in this community. So, and then looking into the 2024 work plan, we've really identified 5 key areas where we think that we need to have some role. Our employers keep telling us over and over and over again, and I think it's happened to you as well, where you offer a position, somebody says, yeah, I love the position, comes to look for a place to live and says, oops, I can't find anything, sorry, I can't take the job. And that's not unique to any part of the state or the country. However, those communities that are successful in housing have the greatest opportunity for getting the employees and then the greatest opportunity for growth. So housing, more so than ever, is really an economic development issue and something that our organization is very aware of. The other hindrance that employers have really been talking about is childcare development. And so you can get them here and housed, and then you need to figure out how to have a place for the children to go. Again, employers are telling us that individuals have gone on maternity leave and then can't come back because they don't have childcare. So they lose really good workers. So part of that is looking at some unique models that, in particular, Mahabiatwa has tried in different communities that are successful, that we're looking at seeing if we can develop and find ways to implement them here in our community. And then BRE is business retention and expansion and business assistance. So we want to really be available to all of our businesses to make sure that whatever it is that they may need or want, that we can help try and figure out a solution for them. Entrepreneur development is important. Small businesses are sort of the backbone of most small communities. So folks who have an idea that would really like to expand into creating a business, we want to be sure that we're there and available for them. And then quality of place is really about all of those things that make Hubbard County an outstanding place to live and work. And so anything that we can do to help impact those things that would make our existing residents or future residents long to be here, we want to be involved in as well if there's a role for us. So that's a little bit about who we are and what we're looking at, and finally what we're asking for and how it plays into things is, you may recall about 3 or 4, maybe 4 or 5 months ago, you approved a request to allocate your LATCF funding to match a grant that we had submitted to USDA. We were unsuccessful in that application, but that grant activities are still valid. In particular, the two that are, I think, the most important is to look at the potential for increased industrial development in northern Hubbard County. That area has a lot of potential because of its closeness to rail, Highway 2, Highway 71, and has some real attractiveness for a lot of businesses. So doing what we can to market that area of the county is, I think, really important, and that was one of the activities under that grant. The other one was the creation or the assistance in creation of a revolving loan fund. Right now, there's a gap lender for the city of Park Rapids, or the city of Park Rapids has its own revolving loan fund, but it stops at the city limits. And there's really not a lot of options available from a countywide perspective. How that can help with some of the programs that we're looking at is, right now I'm actually in conversations with a manufacturer who is looking at a site in northern Hubbard County and is interested in applying to what's called the Minnesota Investment Fund. The avenue for that is that the Minnesota Investment Fund grants the funds to a county revolving loan fund, and then it in turn goes out to a business. So having that mechanism in place at a county level is really important to be able to help filter some state resources, but then with additional local resources, we would be able then to countywide provide that gap financing. And what gap financing means is that a business goes to a bank and typically they will provide 80% of a deal. And then the individual or the business has to come up with 20%, and a lot of times that's challenging. So a gap funder will come in and provide 10%, so then the business or individual has their share down to 10%. It's all collateralized, but it really provides more ability for businesses to meet the demands necessary for financing to be able to start or expand. So the first and third one are interrelated. Is first we need to create the revolving loan fund, and then secondly, we need to be able to set some resources aside. So, and I know that the county has earmarked a certain amount of dollars every year to go for economic development, and I would encourage that a portion of the 2024 resources be allocated to capitalize that county revolving loan fund once it's created. It will take probably the rest of this year to make that happen in order to be able to accept the capitalization for 2024. And then finally, we're asking for an increase of our amount that we receive. We've been getting $72,000 every year. We're asking for a bump to $100,000, just really to help with the increased costs and the staffing, primarily to do all of the work that we're trying to get done. So, does anybody have any questions or comments about what we've been doing or thinking about?
When was the last time the county funding amount changed? Remember?
At least 8 years.
And this, I know the city of Park Rapids, they're at their cap. Even if they wanted to give more, they can't statutorily.
Are you saying it was at 72,000 for 8 years?
Yeah,
Okay.
it's never changed.
It was at 50 at one point, and then, so, when the HRA levy was instituted, there was a contract between my predecessor as HCREDC, and that was passed through, the levy was actually passed through the HRA to the organization. And then that changed, and you did a direct appropriation. And again, I think it was, 8-10 years ago or so that happened, and it was 50, and then it jumped to 72, and then it hasn't changed since.
Prior to
So-
Heartland Lakes, it was basically one person.
Mhm.
So basically, it went just to fund the one person's salary.
Yeah.
And now we have all these other things going on that the cost of operation has increased.
I have a question on number one there, maybe of help me understand what's going on here. The grants that you applied for that we held money to match were not approved, and now you're wanting that money that was held aside to be
Still
given
do
to-
the activities, yes.
What about if a grant opportunity did come up and that grant required a match, and we already gave the money, we wouldn't have the money available for a match?
So they're true. The USDA was the source for this particular funding. It was called the Rural Business Development Grant Program. And the activities under that grant award were these specific things. In conversations with USDA, the things that we were asking to do are less, scored less than a lot of the other applications. So if we went after that particular source of funding again, we would likely be unsuccessful again. They have really changed their priorities in that grant program. That's not to say that these funds could not be leveraged. Again, my request was that two of the activities in particular were really important, and timing is important. The work that we're doing for this particular business that has the potential to locate in northern Hubbard County could really use the Minnesota Investment Fund, and the mechanism to do that is a revolving loan fund, and you don't have one right now. So in the last half of this year, creating that fund would help leverage additional funds in the future. So that was my reasoning for asking that. If we don't have those resources, we'll still try and figure out a way to make the revolving loan fund happen, because that's what we'll do. It would just make it easier. The other thing that we want to do is explore potential opportunities or locations for industrial development in northern Hubbard County. A really good example is Bemidji Steel. It's a high-tech industry that has located in Hubbard County. They have 40 acres so that they can expand. They chose that location because of preferential tax treatment, because Hubbard County is a hub zone. They are on a high commercial highway, which is 71, and they have outstanding internet. Other businesses want that. So we think if we can identify sources or places that would be attractive, we could actually pursue businesses of the similar mindset, which is actually one of the businesses that I'm working with right now. Very high-tech. It's a factory, but it's a high-tech factory that could add as many as 35 jobs in the first line and could expand quite well. So again, it's something that I thought was important anyway. But if you want to hold those resources for a future grant, that's up to you. That's your decision.
That's something to be thinking about, because we don't want to lose an opportunity to match a grant.
Right.
I think we still have 200-some thousand, 23, that has not been expended. Some might, yeah.
About 210.
And then if you don't expend all of the money earmarked in 2024 to start the redevelopment, if you leave a little more, you might have enough to take care of a match.
And these grant resource, that particular fund, and Jeff can be more descriptive about what that particular source of funding was. It's more limited in the types of resources or things that it could be used for. So again, it was really meant to target things that we had already looked for. We do have the economic development resources. There's some left for 2023 based on your initial allocation. Excuse me, that we have not identified a source for. Those clearly could carry over into next year. So there's some opportunities. This one was just a little bit more limited in the use, so.
I have another question about the timing of your request.
Sure.
We had already set the preliminary levy at 6.8%, and I'm one who would kind of like to see that come down from there. And now this is after, and we still got a little more to go to get it at 6.8%. So this is after the preliminary levy that you're requesting this, and so this $28,000 add-on instead of subtracting like we're trying to look for to bring it down. We request that you would put a request like this in sooner, is what I'm saying. That's a 39% increase. I know I didn't know the information until this morning. It's been 8 years since it's been increased, so I can understand and increase. But I'm looking to make some cuts in the budget. So
Yeah,
we got to find something somewhere.
In the future, it certainly would be more helpful to come in like July or August, earlier on in the process, and we've had a couple others that a little slow too behind. But, as a chair, I would advocate for the additional funding for a couple different reasons. Right now, our operations cost us roughly about 180 to 200 grand a year to operate, depending on what project's going on and what staffing level is needed. It can fluctuate a little bit. When you look at what the city and county are funding, they're funding roughly 122,000 of it. They're funding 122,000 of it, which leaves about 40% left to fund through other means. Well, we all know how difficult it is. We get roughly $30,000-$35,000 in support from business, different businesses in town. I don't know if you recently saw the article in the Enterprise where RDO Farms from the Offutt Foundation gave us a $5,000 donation, and Mr. Warmbold had said that they were excited to do that because HLDC is one of the leading organizations in trying to solve the two major problems that are causing them issues at the plant and at the farms, and that's housing and childcare. And we've taken the lead on trying to solve those problems. But how much can you raise from business support alone, and then having to count on administrative fees from the different grants you've gotten to cover that gap of money you need to operate is not a good position to be in, because what if you don't get the grants? What if the economy tails off a little bit and the businesses don't donate for a year or two, or tails back? Then we're in a perilous position. So I'd like to see us get that the operations funded more, at a higher level than it is because of that reason. It would just provide a comfort level that, you know, we're not walking on thin ice sometimes just trying to figure out how we're gonna operate, or force Mary to have to cut positions, and then that's not helping us accomplish what we need to accomplish.
I think you answered another question I had. Is that 17% from business? That's from donations then? It's not, okay.
Yeah, and that's a big ask to be asking, you know, anywhere from 15 to 25% to be coming from business donations. I don't know of any other entity the county funds that requires that. And like I say, they can go up and down on you, so then your stability is in question sometimes.
Do you or Mary just want to remind the board what currently the HLDC is involved in for projects?
Kind of summarized, and I'll go to, jump in, Mary, anytime, but, you know, you've got open items, the Pinecrest Apartment Complex, which is just getting underway. It's important that, you know, we have the correct staffing levels and stuff to deal with that on a timely manner. The big housing development infrastructure project grant application has passed through both the House and the Senate subcommittees. If it goes like it did in the previous budget cycle, if they approve all those things, we're looking at a $3 million grant coming in to HLDC to get the infrastructure in for the housing development behind the apartments. So we're gonna need to be there to do that if that happens. We do need the RLF fund, like you said, that's an ongoing concern if we want to fund some of these other projects. It doesn't have to be, we don't necessarily have to take economic developments and fund the RLF to a high level right away, but we need to create it so that we can use those mechanisms, or the state can fund into there so we can do things. We're still actively engaged, full bore on childcare, trying to find solutions to that, and working with Mojave and other entities trying to solve that. Ongoing things that we're doing in operations, as Mary mentioned, the hangar, business development and assistant, trying to find capital access to small business, the Lunch and Learn program. We're working with every government entity, as you saw with Pinecrest, when we did the tax abatement to get this housing project done, and of course, the career fair. There's a lot going on, and I would just like to see us figure out how to fund it a little more, so I'm not sitting there as the chair of this board, and Mary's not sitting there wondering, you know, how's it gonna look this year? We're gonna have to shave staff or cut back on what we do, because I don't think we wanna cut back on the things we're doing, because they are having an impact, and you could see that with the Main Street grants and different things. And I think our community is actually in a lot better position than a lot of communities throughout the state. Matter of fact, a lot of people come up to me, and I know Wadena County has, I know you get a lot of conversation, what are you guys doing?
We also did go and meet just last week with the city of Akeley to remind them that we have services available, and let them know that they are part of the county as well. So we are working on scheduling for LaPorte and Nevis as well, which is our organized cities. But we're actively out trying to make sure that the individuals and governmental entities within the community are aware of us, and that we have the capacity to help provide assistance as necessary.
So one thing I'd just like to remind the board of, because we were reminded at the Mojave board, how important it is to have planned for projects, so when opportunities come for grants, we already have things in place. And so Mojave was able to do that because they had land available, so they were able to apply for a $1.8 million grant. This $3 million grant that we have the application in for, we were able to apply right away, because under Mary's leadership, we'd already purchased the land and had a plan. If we hadn't even had a plan, and we had to start creating all that, that type of community isn't even in the ballpark for running. So
You are 100% right about that, Commissioner Christensen, because I think most communities never get the tools in the chest that they need when the opportunities come along. Then the burden of trying to create those tools real rapidly to take advantage of the situation, they can't get it done fast enough. You have to set the stage for economic growth. If you don't set the stage properly, nobody's coming to act. You know, it's like you put a sign outside your city that says lots for sale. What does that mean? Doesn't mean anything. You know, if you don't have a conducive business environment and you don't have, you know, partners that are there to help these businesses answer questions and navigate the intricacies of your community to build a business, they're not gonna come. They're gonna go to the place that has all those things in place, ready to go. And we've done some of that. We've created some of those tools. We just got, you know, another one or two to get in place, and then we'll have what we need when those opportunities arise.
I can see having those tools in place, there's a revolving loan fund, but I think the primary economic driver of local going all the way up to the federal level is low taxes and less government regulation. You have those two things, you're gonna drive economic growth. And right now, you know, that green sheet that we got from MRC, you know, we're kind of in the
Number 18?
Number 18 as far as taxes per house, which is a good place to be, but if we start getting on the bottom of the list by overtaxing, then we're gonna start dropping this economic growth in the area. So-
You're 100% right, and it goes back to my comment, the ones on the bottom have a hard time creating those tools, because they're so far behind the 8 ball, they can't get out in front of it. We're in a unique position where we're up here, and we didn't have any of those tools. So we were still missing out on the growth coming here, because they would go to greener pastures. Now, because we're up here, if we can create those tools, we'll be in a really good position.
Yep, we gotta balance the two.
Yep.
Creating those tools and keeping our taxes down. So we're at 6.8%. Between now and December, we've got to do some hashing of numbers, just like you were talking about, to try to me, get it even less than 6.8%.
And I understand that from a taxpayer perspective and wanting to do that. We believe that economic growth leads to tax capacity, and tax capacity leads to a lower tax rate. So even though the taxes may have to go up, each individual pays less because we have more growth and more folks paying, businesses and individuals paying taxes by an increase in capacity. So that's really what we focus on. Back to the land thing, I do want to say one other thing is that countywide, it is really difficult to find land for anything. So being forward-thinking and looking and targeting good locations is going to be even more and more important. And that's again why the Northern Hubbard Industrial Park has some real attractiveness, and sort of one of the ideas that we've kicked around is a sewer and water district to bring municipal services to rural areas without being within a city limit, so that you can use the industry to subsidize the creation of the district and then potentially serve households off of that, because households over the long term being on municipal services is better from a cost perspective. So, and we think that there's some potential for all of the things that are right with that area, that is an attractive thing to really think about, but it requires land, and we have to start thinking about the accumulation of land in some way so that it doesn't go away, because that's part of what hampers us in getting new businesses or businesses to expand. I spend a lot of time looking for land.
One thing I would add, you know, was on a roughly $20 million levy, the ask here is $28,000. If we include $20,000 for the HRA, because they got some things they could address too, you're talking about a $50,000 ask on a $20 million budget to prevent yourself from, or to make sure you have the capacity to see these things through. I think that's a lot to ask.
Oh, we got the numbers of all the ask, of all the departments, all the different organizations. So we've got to juggle some numbers. We've got to look at the whole thing, not just, well, yeah,
Oh, yeah.
you're right about one individual area, yeah.
So I would like to see this incorporated into the budget, and then we can start picking through the whole budget again, trying to meet whatever objectives we're trying to meet.
Yep.
But this little amount for the HRA and for this would only amount to less than 0.25%.
But like I said, each one has a little
Yeah.
amount here, a little amount there.
But I'd like to see how it affects, get it into the whole thing, and then
Yep.
go through our last changes.
Okay.
I do have a question about the community breakdown that you provided us, the number of businesses.
Sure.
For grants and whatnot. Is there somewhere we can go to look at the breakdown of that? What those grant dollars were used for, or the type of business, if not the specific business name per se, but
Yeah, I can provide that information. So as far as the use of I can tell you that because the grant was specific. So it had to be all things like new windows, new doors, new facade, heating or cooling kinds of things, remodeling. So it was all things that are attached to the building or attached to the land. So that was exclusively what it could be used for. But yes, I can give you a breakdown of the types of businesses.
appreciate that.
I'll send that to Jeff, and then he can distribute it to all of you.
thank you.
And I just want to say, HLDC does a lot of good things. You're talking about stuff now in northern Hubbard County, my district. I've been a commissioner almost 5 years now. Can you tell me of any economic development or housing projects that HLDC has done in my district the last few years?
At this point, we have not had a lot of success doing something. I have a very real project right now that is looking to create a factory that will provide about 35 jobs, and it is in an industry that has extreme growth potential. And then again, it is about looking at the future and some of those things. As I said, land is kind of an issue. And if you do subdivision development in a rural part of the county, generally you need 2 acres of land for the well and septic in order to, that's sort of the minimum. And then depending on what a township wants to do, it could be as 5 or 10 acres. Well, when it comes to affordable housing development, especially for workforce, it becomes very challenging to accumulate and have that much land and make homes still affordable. So one of the ways to do that is looking at common interest communities where it's a shared septic service or a shared service. This would work really well on fringe communities or fringes of communities. So if, for instance, someone has land that is just outside of Park Rapids but isn't municipally served, you set up the subdivision so that it's all common with one connection point, so that you can have smaller lots, that you can have more affordable homes, and then when the municipal services go by, because likely a community will grow, then it's one connection, and it's not about serving somebody with 200 front feet of land that they have to bring the services by. So a lot of it has to do with smart growth and some of those things. We have not been as successful. I've been here for 2 years, or going on 3. And so we haven't been as successful in Hubbard County, but it's really been about thinking about what kinds of things will work. And I think we're coming on what kinds of things will work. And so now it's about, okay, how do we make those happen? So that next year I don't have to say to you, I haven't been successful. Next year I can say, yes, we have been, and this is what we've done.
I've seen some of those more down toward the Twin Cities or St. Cloud area, Wright County area, where it's mostly has to do with lake lots or lakes itself. They got populated areas, of course, and they do have shared septic systems, well systems and stuff like that. So I know that it doesn't have to be in a city to have a development be successful in that. So I appreciate that you're working on that stuff. And I know I know government takes time. And then, I guess the only other thing I wanted to touch on was your board membership. I know, or I'm acquainted with just about everybody on this list here. All fine, upstanding people, good to have. And I know it's hard to find people to volunteer for boards and stuff like that. I know I've had that, we've all had that issue when we've had to replace somebody. I've noticed though that they've all got something in common. They're all either live and or work in Park Rapids. So I don't see any representation from Greater Hubbard County. And I think if there was more representation from Greater Hubbard County, maybe there would maybe be more things happening outside of the Park Rapids area.
And excuse me, that is a good point. Eric Wolf does live in Nevis, and so we do have that, but we do not have representation from other areas. And that is a good point taken. We have, actually Kathy Henry has said that she is stepping off, so we have an opportunity to potentially recruit someone from a Greater Hubbard County in this next year to help with that perspective, which we don't have. Point taken.
We are running behind. We were supposed to be at the lobby of the jail about 15 minutes ago. So it might be appropriate to take our intermission now, to recess until for the tour. We are supposed to be back with Bruce Schwartzman at 11 o'clock.
Okay, we will recess to 11 o'clock. Is that going to be enough time, or you need a little bit more?
We will reopen the meeting when we have a quorum back here.
Okay, we'll put it that way. We'll reopen when we have a full quorum. All right, thanks.
Thank you.
much.
improvements. From a budget efficiency standpoint, the cost savings for remodeling versus new construction are tremendous. It's probably, I would say the remodeling costs are probably 40 to 50%, if not less, than what it would be for a new facility. It's quite substantial for a new facility, especially in today's construction cost. And changes will not require increased staffing. Oops, wrong way. In the plan that's shown on the screen at the very top, the areas that we're talking about, which is this kind of phase one approach, the area in the green, this is an aerial view of the campus, and the green area is the housing unit, the jail housing unit, and talks about renovate those jail housing pods by providing increased separations, which will be adding walls and creating additional separations so that there's physically separated areas to better separate inmates. The blue area on the left-hand side across the street identifies the idea of expanding the intake booking area, adding a pre-book area, and expanding and building a new law enforcement garage for those vehicles as well. So it will require closing the street. We believe there's been some preliminary conversations with the city that sounds like a good option to move forward with. The purple area was a long-term plan. I think that's not being really reviewed at this point in time, but the idea is at some point in time in the future, there is property there that with the old jail not being used, that could be removed and utilized for other county functions, but that's really not kind of really what we're talking about in this one. And the other piece of this too is there will be some remodeling that I'll talk about that's being planned for the government center itself. Going item by item, the dispatch changes that we talked about, and I'll be succinct. I really don't want to, hopefully get a copy of all this to you, but really the first one for dispatch is located in a location now and a height that doesn't provide accessibility. So by moving the location of dispatch would provide more opportunities for other individuals to apply for the job. So you expand the applicants who could actually apply for this job by moving the location of dispatch. The lack of daylight in that area on a 12-hour shift can be a tiring, wearing kind of factor, and so by where it's being planned to move would allow us to get daylight into that space as well, which again creates a better work environment for those individuals. In intake, the remodeling for booking and intake we're talking about, there's been a lot of mental health issues. That's again, not something we're just seeing here in Minnesota, but across the country. And those mental health challenges create the need for additional cells, the additional ability to separate and segregate even when individuals come into booking. There's been a number of people with substance abuse and suicidal, which require higher observation and putting those individuals not within group settings, but in individual cell for monitoring. Individuals being retained, we're seeing more and more less of minor offenses and more felonies, which requires that they spend longer time in jail during some of the processing and pre-sentencing. There's limited detox and treatment areas, and all of these factors are going to require, go to the need for the individual cells. Well, the plan that we've shown, the conceptual plan, does add additional cells and better operational efficiency as far as adding scanners in a pre-book area that will increase operational efficiency as well as just overall security within the pre-book and booking areas. Oops. The pre-book area that we talked about, basically what we're doing is taking the old vehicle Sallyport and converting part of that into a pre-book area and then expanding the other piece into booking. Adding the pre-book area is operational benefits. Currently is not a pre-book area, and the pre-book area is a lot of times where the arresting officer brings the individual in for the initial paperwork. This provides this better transfer of inmates and paperwork process as they come in. So not having that space creates operational issues, and by creating it will be a tremendous benefit to the facility. The separation of noise and activity from intake to booking provides better control of environments. You might have somebody that's a little bit out of control or having some issues or substance abuse issues, that having that pre-book area separated from the booking does help to kind of control the noise and the disturbance from one area to the other. It will help improve the processing time by the officers being able to do some of that booking work before they actually turn that individual over to the jail staff. Provides proper separation for the officers when entering and securing the perimeter of the building. So it increases that and keeps the arrestees separated from those in custody while they're waiting for the intoxilizer and things of the results. So again, it's a better process to have that pre-book area that's being planned. The vehicle sally port, the existing vehicle sally port, like I mentioned, is going to be converted and added for cells into the pre-book and the booking area. The existing sally port is pulled back out of configuration within limited space. So right now it's really a tight, limited vehicle sally port. So by moving it like we're talking about, it'll create additional space. The existing space is not sized large enough to accommodate transport vehicles or ambulances. So again, the new vehicle sally port that's right in the street kind of area would be sized properly to accommodate the needed emergency vehicles. Kitchen access is currently through the garage, which is not the best flow. So the new layout would provide for a separate access from the exterior with the sally port into that kitchen access, and that would help that space as well. One of these times I'll remember it's my left finger I need to click with to move this forward. Item 5 was the LEC storage. So there's need for adequate space for more accessible space. So the LEC vehicle storage currently space does not accommodate all the public safety vehicles and apparatus. Squads and tactical vehicles are currently stored 3 separate locations. So this would be bringing all of those vehicles together in one location. The locations do not provide the space needed for all the response. So the increased space and for general storage is needed. The existing garage doors are way too small, so this would accommodate the need for those additional spaces as well, and additional doors for the movement of those vehicles. The existing bays are too shallow, so the change would accommodate that. And the substation in Cass Lake is currently used for rotational seasonal vehicles and solid waste. So I think that would help with minimizing some of that movement and storing of vehicles. And then, like I mentioned earlier, this vehicle sally port is limited as far as vehicle evidence and processing, which will allow for increased area, which is needed for those operations as well. In the housing units, basically right now you have these large, linear, somewhat kind of units. The plan for these, it does not provide the type of separation and segregation needed. So what happens is, you're by state law and by Minnesota DOC, you're supposed to bring these inmates out for recreation, or at least out of their cell for a certain period during the day. Well, if you have only one classification or an individual that does not get along with others based on their classification in those units, it limits how many people you can actually put in there. By separating them, now you have a lot more operational flexibility to put different people, whether it's female or males, in different units and get better use of those spaces. So that the ability to use those space increases based on the changing inmate demographics and the increased gross misdemeanors and felonies. Again, it's needed more separations. The changes would increase the capacity of the existing beds based on the new separation. So basically the way DOC looks at it is, if you don't have all these separations, they know from an operational impact you're not going to be able to house as many people. By creating these separations, it gives you the ability to basically increase capacity without adding more beds. There are currently 6 levels of separation. The new proposed plan would actually create 18 levels of separation. So again, much higher ability to separate and segregate individuals based on their offenses and their classifications. The new plan would not increase staffing. It would maintain the minimum DOC requirements for indirect podular design, which is 1 to 40 inmates, 1 staff to 40 inmates on a 24-hour basis. Plan changes would improve the movement for work release inmates, limiting contraband as well, getting into the facility, and additional separation provided by increased pandemic. By doing these additional separations, of course, it increased the issue of if a pandemic, or not if, but when a pandemic should occur again, it'll actually have the increased separation to provide for that. Was there a question that I missed? No? Okay. I'll continue going through it. Hopefully I'm not going too quick on some of this information, but it's more available for your review. On the government center side, really what's being looked at is some minor modifications on the first and second floor, and we haven't dug into this as deeply as the concept plans we developed on the jail and the law enforcement center. But this really deals with some changes on the first and second floor. It'll address some needed additional office space, some improved operational flows and communication flows, and address some kind of break space requirements for the different teams. The schedule that we identified showed starting the planning potentially still this year, potentially in December or even in November, doing the pre-planning or the initial kind of preliminary design, pre-design planning, then going into what's considered schematic design, which is really where you finalize plans, develop the exterior elevations more, go into more detail. From that, you go into design development, which again is another layer of detail where you add how many outlets you need, where those outlets should be, what kind of floor finishes we have, what are the ceilings, and it adds another layer of detail in design development. And all this is developed, of course, with multiple meetings with the user groups to make sure it's heading in the right direction. At the end of each one of these phases, we typically would come back to the board as well with updates. At the completion of the construction documents, again, then we come back to the board, review where we are with the budget, make sure we're on track before issuing the project for bid. We would estimate roughly 2 months of bid. So that design phase is about an 8 to 10 month period, all told, I think, is what we're showing. The bid period is roughly 2 months. We're showing a procurement period. Basically, this is a preliminary schedule. That procurement period could go to February, March, maybe it starts sooner, but it's really somewhat based on getting the best bids in our climate. Always tends to be in that really November, December, January, February. That November to February timeframe is when most contractors are looking for new projects. They're planning out their new work, and so bidding the project as you get closer to that winter time period and into even into early spring to some extent is really when your best time period for bidding. We've added that procurement phase because in current projects we found that there's certain items like steel and precast, generators, switchgear that have taken longer lead time. So giving that additional time to the contractor to order and to review and order the materials has helped. We are showing a construction phase. One thing about remodeling an existing building, you develop a plan that works for all the departments and addresses their spaces properly. And then you have to take that plan and say, okay, how are we going to phase it? So first off, we're not having to house inmates out of county, which is an additional cost. And we're not having to move staff multiple times to create inefficiencies for them. So we're assuming right now there's 3 phases of the project. And so the yellow bars, these yellowish bars you see here, basically the first phase of construction, which would be building the new vehicle sally port, the increased vehicle storage area and all that piece getting the vehicle sally port set up before you start remodeling in some of the existing, but maintaining booking and doing that. And then in the housing units, you would do a series of units, but you'd never do all of them at the same time. But you want to make sure you do a few, maybe the north side or the east side and then the west side, making sure you're maintaining areas for the inmates without having to move them out of county. With the idea that really by the time you get into early 2027, late 2026, early 2027, the construction is completed at that point. So that's the tentative schedule we've laid out based on the work involved. We think it's very realistic and very doable. Could this slide forward a little bit? Possibly, depending upon how quick the county wants to move ahead.
So there are a couple of points that I would make. There is the talking about the renovations in the government center. The vast majority of that is related to the first floor and the attorney's office needs, which I know we've had a conversation about and directed to try to make that happen quickly. There's a small element of that, mechanical service to the probation office. We cut off some of the water. They don't have hot water and they don't have access to both of the restrooms in their facility. The other elements of that would be some elements on the second floor related to the proposed combination of offices and making that more efficient. You'll see in the project cost that that's a marginal point. This proposed schedule also works really well relative to the county's current debt service schedule, because it proposes going out for bonding for a majority of this project, and it would happen at a time when we're finishing off another debt. So we would really see that continue without having a financial impact, other than continuing the debt service.
Yeah, and clearly on the probation and getting them, that could be done up front here. And I think we would work with the county really to get that moving as soon as possible to get the probation. And there's a good chance that really when you're bidding this, that there would be an additional phase. It really could be that government center and get that done. I think there is a benefit of having one contractor in there to do it all. But again, that's up for discussion. But I think there could be a slight benefit by having one contractor do it all and having an additional phase early on that would be the government center remodeling. I think that's very doable. From a budget standpoint, these are the same numbers we showed previously. The only thing we've done is add estimated remodeling for the government center. And again, when you're doing a study, you're still at a high level of analysis. You don't have all the items finalized and picked out for final numbers to know exactly where you stand. So it's a really rough estimate. Also, we've been doing a low and a high estimate because construction prices had been fluctuating so much. We've seen things settle down quite a bit, but there is some fluctuation that we're still in a study phase, still doing a low and a high to make sure we're really looking at the full range of where that number could be. So, the way we've broken this up is by the cost of what some of the unit cost of what typically these types of areas are, like a garage and the vehicle sally port, don't have a lot of finishes, and it's a fairly simple space. So there's a certain cost for those that's less expensive than an intake and booking area, which is actually more, hard sells, more electronic hardware, things like this. Dispatch remodeling, we've included some cost for that in moving some of the existing equipment and remodeling the space. Housing unit separations to build the walls and the separation of the units of the areas required in there. We've got a range of 600 to 750. We've budgeted an amount between 560 to 700,000 for the government center remodeling, which brings the construction total to roughly about 4.6 or 4.7 million to 5.5. To that, you would add a value for design contingency, so finalizing the design, making sure you got all the cameras needed, all the monitors needed, all the things coordinated properly, as well as allowing roughly 5% for construction contingency for the things, the unknowns and the changes that happen during construction. So basically, if you're looking at a construction budget in today's dollars, it's about 5.2 to 6.2. Now, I have inflated that out to 2026, but actually, to tell you true, yeah, we inflated to midpoint of construction, which is what'll happen is certain contractors will bid, but they will inflate their values based on when their work will occur. So we've inflated to midpoint of construction, and we've added to that soft costs. Soft costs are architectural engineering fees, furniture, testing, other things that are not, the permit might be part of that, plan review could be part of that. So there's some things that are sometimes out of that number that are considered soft costs, but that's, typically soft costs are roughly 18 to 20% plus or minus. So we're showing 1.3 to 1.5 for those soft costs, which would bring the total estimated project cost at this 7.2 to roughly 8.6. And that is what I have for the presentation, folks. The rest, I think, is just to answer any questions you all have. And if I went through that too quickly, I'd be glad to hit any points I missed.
I got a question that may be more for Jeff than anything, but I've never been involved in a bonding process like this before, and when you have a midpoint, not a midpoint, but you've got a low and a high estimate, when you do the bonding approval, do you do it for the high amount, or how does that work?
So we wouldn't be to the point of issuing the debt until we got through the next couple of phases of design development, and that number would be significantly closer
Okay.
than it is now. The high and low, as he said, is for planning purposes, and I don't know if you want to run back, Bruce, and show the timeline where we would be probably working with Ellers to issue the debt, but it's after the first two phases of architectural design, so that number would be a lot closer.
Okay.
Yeah, in the, Commissioner and Jeff, in the pre-design phase, which is the next phase, which is kind of a couple months duration, we would go ahead and work with the departments, make sure the plans address their spaces adequately, kind of go through it. And then we would add another level of detailed cost estimate to it based on the conditions that we understand. We'd do some additional site verifications of existing construction conditions. And that would give us the ability to take really this high and low and really develop a more detailed estimate on the exact construction. And all the counties we deal with, like Jeff was saying as well, I think the bonding actually doesn't occur till typically after the project bids and you get ready to start is really when the bonds are issued, that I've seen in the past.
So we also have two options relative to that. We've been setting money aside for capital. We've been spending some of that in current capital. You have the opportunity, and we will probably do this in our January meeting, where we will issue a resolution that says that we intend to recapture money spent on capital projects when we issue our next capital debt. Doesn't mean we have to. So if we incur costs relative to probation office or this space and we decide to pay cash for it, great. If we decide we want to include that in our bond and pay our capital fund back, we can do that too. Ellers will present all those options. They'll probably be here in December or January talking about what those options look like. But they'll have a timeline that maps along with a project like this and show what that looks like over a period of time, and then modeling on how that impacts the operating budget and fund balances, debt service, and levy. They're going to bring all that in together. So we have some flexibility. We will know that number way better before we get to the point of issuing debt.
So regarding the debt service that drops away, does it look like this will pretty much be close to dollar for dollar or close to what drops away?
Within 5%. So we're dropping off about $600,000. I just calculated at 5%, and I figured financing the whole thing at $600,000. So it is roughly dollar for dollar. When the last bond drops off, we would be picking up the new one.
Okay.
That's my estimate. That's why I'm going to give 5%. I say dollar for dollar, but within 5%. And it also depends on how much cash we put in versus how much we fund.
Any other questions?
The thing not to overlook that Bruce talked about relative to remodeling, not just for this year, for next year, but well into the future, spending these dollars soon at an appropriate time when it makes sense relative to financing means we're good for the next 20 years again. It means, again, when this bond is finishing up, it'll be time for another refresh. That's the nature of maintaining a $20 million building, is that's what it takes over time. But in an era where, what did Carlton just do, an $80 million? Stearns is looking at a $300 million. We're well positioned. Everything that we have is in good shape. It's just not as flexible for the needs relative to the variety of inmates we're holding, the types of situations that law enforcement is dealing with, the separation of duties that we've identified. That mental health thing really has a lot to do with what goes on in the intake space. And the other two things that are less, we're less able to capture the exact costs. Getting dispatch into an office space instead of being in the jail space, I really do think will play into a retention number. And And the final one is to be able to have the majority of the equipment that law enforcement needs to be here on site as opposed to other places.
Maybe another question would be, I know you can't look into the future of what it's gonna be like, but do you believe this design now has a chance of lasting longer than the 22 years or so that this last build did?
I would say so. I mean, so operationally, the space that we're adding and changing it will address some of the shortcomings, I hate to say, of the existing facility. You know, you have a nice facility, but the larger units, which were kind of more intended for what they considered direct supervision, don't work well for separations. We're working with a lot of counties around the state, including St. Louis County, where they're looking at subdividing some additional units as well. So like Jeff said, this should last for a while. The only thing you should really have to address in the future are the things that typically need to be addressed in facilities is the cameras and security system get old and they get antiquated, you know, after 10, 15 years or so, and that needs to be addressed. Sometimes security locks need to be addressed. But if you maintain your facility, it definitely can last longer than that 20 some year period.
Mechanical systems, other typical, like the work we're doing down the hall here, right? Mechanical system, I think that was probably done was it done in 14 when the last major work was done here? Well, I don't know when those systems were, but 10 to 15 years on mechanical systems, 15 to 20 on roofs, and then all of the other technology are just regular parts of maintaining our plant.
And to answer that question, and it'll tie in with a question Commissioner Kiernan asked us during our tour, would be the size of our garage that's gonna be being built, you know, across the street. Is that big enough for our needs and for long-term? As I, you know, listen to this being explained, you know, maybe a better response for you and then for you as well would be, I have no doubt we'll be able to fill that up on day one, because we have a lot of vehicles. That, you know, so building that, I think we're still gonna have to utilize some other areas, you know, like for some of our boats and stuff. I don't think we're gonna be able to put everything in that building. That doesn't mean that, even if we built it twice that big, I don't know that we would not have to utilize other areas. So I think it will serve a great purpose, you know, for our needs and the stuff that we would require to have here on site, on our grounds, we'll be able to do that. But again, you know, out at solid waste, we probably still will have to utilize a storage building out there for some of our boats, you know, for the long term, for the winter time and stuff.
Have they ever had an issue with you utilizing that space?
No, we actually newly acquired, being able to share one of the buildings out there, so, but you know what, one thing it will keep us from having to do, we have a substation up by Cass Lake in Fardin Township. Well, what we do this time of year, we have a deputy or two start hauling stuff up there, you know, to put stuff in that building. Well, then in the spring, they haul it back, so that will be avoided, you
That's
know.
probably okay, because that's probably cheaper than adding a whole bunch more building space for stuff like that that sits for 6
Yeah.
months.
Yeah.
until You're
Yeah.
not gonna go get it for 6 months.
Correct, and being able to utilize that building at solid waste, which for the most part was, you know, half empty, was very nice, and I have to, you know, thank Josh out there for allowing us to.
Good use of space.
Yeah, absolutely, and that's gonna be nice, and I hate to have to keep begging other department heads for this or that, but, sometimes if they have something that would really make sense for us, I'm not afraid to ask, and.
With 1,000 square miles, this is not the best place to stage everything either.
Right, no,
So-
I hear you.
But,
I hear
but
you.
it does provide them access to,
Yeah.
you know.
Nothing's
things-
ever gonna be a perfect
Nope.
solution, so.
No,
I guess the only question I have is, are you happy with this?
yeah, I think so. I think it's gonna be great, and you know, you never know until you're in it to then decide, oh boy, I wish we would have done this differently, but I certainly turn a lot of the jail, you know, questions and decisions over, you know, to Joe, you know, and his staff, you know, what makes the most sense, because I'm not gonna pretend that I know how to design a jail. I'm not, a lot of sheriffs might do that, I'm not going to do that. because we have people that truly, know the answer to some of those things. But yes, I'm happy with what I see on paper, absolutely.
And I know too, excuse me, I built a 40 by 48 steel building. Now I wish it was a little bit bigger and a little bit taller.
Yep, I totally agree. I think whatever your needs are, you should always double it, you know, because you never know. You know,
Well,
storage is a great thing. I mean, it's something that you can't stress it enough, but, and you
When
can't.
one of the things,
That, Corey, though, because the bigger it is, the more you
I
just
know,
fill it up.
I know.
Yeah, it's like-
Yep, I know.
and I mean, one of the things we'll do with you and during the design process, we build everything when we develop it three-dimensionally in the computer. So one of the things that's great is we can go through and really walk through that space and understand what it's gonna lay out and how it's gonna look and feel before it's even built and before the documents are even finished. So we do have a process now to make sure we get everybody's input to make sure it's as close to what everybody expects as possible.
One thing I will say, and this is probably more of a statement or something for you, and maybe you've already addressed this. And, I mean, I'm worried about the sheriff's office stuff. I'm not so much worried about, you know, space for Bobby or space for, you know, other agencies. But, as you know, as far as the garage across the street goes, they do utilize some of that. Now, I don't know if you've taken some of that into consideration or planning on something there, but I will say this, for our unit, if you're gonna make some space for them, if you are, it has to be separate from ours, because there's a likelihood we would have to store maybe some evidence there, like a vehicle, that we can't have, just anybody being able to come
Yeah.
and go.
Sheriff, you and I had a brief talk, if we were able to do this, that we might have access to that north lot.
Okay.
And I have social services and transit working with the state of Minnesota to figure out a grant application to
Okay.
do a garage there that would be sufficient for transit and would also house then Bobby's stuff.
Okay.
So that's kind of running along. We'll end up throwing that into the capital plan, but I anticipate that will be largely funded by the state. And my intention is not to have them share space with you. We would find some other way to work that out.
Okay. Yeah, and I just didn't wanna.
Yep, no, it's good to say it out
leave
loud.
them out in the weather, you know, just
Under a tarp.
under a tarp, yeah.
There's potentially options for more space just a few blocks west in
Okay,
another year or two,
sure,
Yep.
as a temporary deal.
yeah, okay.
I have one question about the inmate visitation process. I mean, the way it appears right now, when someone comes and visits an inmate, they can only talk to him, they don't actually see him. Is that how it works now?
No, they can see them on a screen,
On a screen?
yeah.
Oh,
Yeah, we don't do face-to-face.
okay.
It's just kind of a nightmare to do it that way. This isn't even really ideal. Our entryway, the way you come into our building, is wherever the staff and the public and visitors all use the same door. It gets congested in there. It's not ideal, but they come in, they sit down on a chair. They have the monitor and the phone there, and then that's how they visit with the inmate who is inside of the jail on a similar kind of a thing where they can visit that way.
Okay.
But yeah, it's not glass and they're, you know, face to face, but it's a monitor.
Do many prisons have that glass and face-to-face with the glass between?
Not anymore. It's 90% of them, I would say, in all new construction, is similar to what we have.
Okay.
Just
I was
because-
just curious about it.
Yeah, when I started in the old jail, every time someone came to visit, you walked all the way down, got the guy, brought him all the way back. It was just visiting days, like Corey said, were nightmares. Now it's kind of all automated, you know, I mean, we just
Yeah,
holler.
you tied up staff so bad when somebody wants to come to visit. It's so staff time.
Very staff intensive.
Yeah, and so we do it differently.
Just needed that explained to me.
Yeah,
Okay.
yeah.
All right,
And,
thanks.
and, you know, I'm sure inmates would rather have it a little bit differently. But it's not the way it is anymore, so,
Okay.
yeah.
Any more questions?
So relative to the project, I think, Bruce, we have one more bit to talk about this morning, right? And that would be relative to the fees and the costs going forward. And those were baked into the estimates that you had previously shown, Bruce, so
Yep.
they're all in there. But
Exactly.
eventually, what this means if we decide to move forward is, Bruce and BKV have put forward a proposal for professional services to begin this work. And beginning this work really means seeing it through to the end, because either we're making an investment up front in cash dollars, or we're making an investment down the road when we're financing the project to pay them. But I will let Bruce describe that. And then the conversation would be, if we want to start this in late November, early December in the preliminary design phases, that would be after we bring it to the board for approval of this proposal.
So we submitted a proposal, and I'll share it real quick if you want, Jeff, and I'll just hit some of the highlights of it. Basically, we put together a proposal. Let me go to a larger view so you can see it a little. Actually, I don't know if that's going to make it better, but anyway. Oh, that doesn't make it better. There we go. Can you see that all right? I'll make it larger as we go. But anyway, basically, it's a proposal. We've done a lot of this work. BKV, we've been around for over 44 years, and over 43 years of my career, I've spent mostly in doing jails and justice facilities and government centers. So the scope that we've provided, the proposal we provided from Jeff, provides a lot of detail of how we would do it. This would be followed by a little more detailed contract if the board approves us to proceed. But really, it talks about the pre-design and the first step associated with pre-design, which is really meeting with the departments and kind of going through the plan and making sure that, in general, the spaces and the layout and the things meet their goals and their requirement for some of these things, and make sure we've got that in line. Talk about construction a little bit and the construction type of those spaces, and then put together a more detailed estimate that I mentioned previously, and then come back to the county board at the end of this pre-design period, which is roughly 2 months, to show where we are with the design, show you the plans that are being, the changes that are being proposed, and again, a more refined construction estimate as well as a construction schedule. After that, we would go into those design phases, like I mentioned before, which is the schematic, design, development, construction documents, and each build on each other in the subsequent kind of detail. But these are the information that we would propose. Again, the schedule I noted was roughly 2 months for the pre-design, 2 months for schematic design, roughly 2.5 months for design development, and about 2.5 to 3 months for the construction documents and finalizing those. And again, each one of these phases would have multiple meetings with the counties to make sure that the information we're developing is heading in the right direction, and we're hearing some of the things that have been requested, and we're making sure we incorporate things and reviewing them and going through them appropriately. Construction administration phases, I mentioned previously, 18 to 20 months, but again, as we get closer to a more refined, we'll figure it out from there. The proposed fee that we presented was about 5.7, or what I noted was 5.7% of the estimated budget. So it's 5.7% of the estimated construction budget. And if you took a look at the low side, it's about 355,000. On the high side, it's about 421,000. And again, when we come back, the way we typically structure our contract is we do it based on this range of 5.7, but whatever the final budget that the county board approves at the end of the design development phase, we would lock in our percentage at that point in time. The construction administration portion, because of the duration, the multi-phases, that's about 1.45% to handle that, roughly 18 to 20 months. Again, if that goes down from the estimated duration we have, again, that would reduce some as well. But we're showing that roughly at this 90 to 107,000. So the total fee being roughly this, 440 some thousand to about $520,000. The total fee involving the pre-design through construction administration. So basically that total, almost 3 years of duration and involvement in supporting the project. In addition to the basic fee, there would be some amount for reimbursable expenses such as travel, lodging, meals, printing, things like that, which are typical incidental kind of reimbursable cost for any design project. And then again, if the board approves this proposal, what we would do is draft what's considered an AIA contract that spells out more duration, more detail and more specifics on contract requirements, just to get that in place with the county. And that's probably exactly the same kind of contract you've used on the government center expansion, the jail project, the jail remodeling project. I'm sure that's exactly the same contract you all have used in the past.
And by way of process, both myself and the attorney's office would review this and then that contract before it would come to you for approval. I think we have a very similar contract on the current project over at the historic courthouse on the roof. That's a very standard architectural agreement.
On the fee, we've tried to be very competitive and very transparent in how it's developing. And again, our goal is to do excellent work for you at a very reasonable fee.
And at my request, the fee was structured this way to be a percentage of the project instead of cash up front and then a smaller percentage of the project. And they were very gracious to write it that way.
So you need some direction about when?
So my question would be if you have any other questions for Bruce, or if I should be planning to bring this in November for consideration of the board, take some time to review it myself. When I'm looking at these fees, I know they are very competitive because I've looked at these projects before, and I would have Jonathan look at them as well to make sure.
I'd say just as soon as you and Jonathan have reviewed everything, bring it to the board.
Okay.
Yeah, I
Others
agree.
Same way? Okay.
Any other questions for Bruce and his group before we let them go?
Thank you, Bruce.
Thanks,
Yep,
Bruce.
thank you.
Thank you. Thank you, commissioners. And Jeff, when you do bring that to the board, I'd be glad to attend the meeting as well and answer any other additional questions if there are any at that time.
Yep, we'll talk scheduling later this week.
Excellent. Thanks, everybody. Have a great day.
You too.
Bye, Kelly. Bye.
That concludes.
Back to you if you want to still do committee meetings or committee reports, or
Can we save them for next time?
I was gonna say I could do mine first. I don't have any.
I don't really have much to do, so.
Oh, then, yeah, we're 3 down already, so we might as well wait till next time.
Yeah, the only thing I added was Healthy Hubbard County, and that was that survey,
Okay.
online survey. They just want to pass the word, do as much as possible, because it's only 3 counties.
Yeah.
We're the smallest of the 3, so do the survey, pass it along to all the community members. $15 gift card at the end will be sent to you, and that's it.
I just had MRC and Parks Board, but then we got a Parks Board meeting next week, which we can update even more then.
in upcoming meetings, of course, we have the district meeting tomorrow at Beltrami County. And then we have the annual conference December 4, 5, and 6. So if you're intending to register and want to get that done, Denise can coordinate for you.
Again, I'll be gone December 1st or 2nd, all the way through the 15th.
So we won't have another,
14th for Truth and Tax, and I'll be online for the 12th.
so we won't have another board meeting until the 12th, December.
We have 2 board meetings in November.
Oh,
We're gonna
you got a good point there.
We're gonna go
We've
on
been
as
here a
usual
while.
and still have
Ted,
meetings in
that's okay.
November.
Oh. And I guess one other thing, it's my turn for the managers meeting.
Oh, that's right.
Yep, that's Tuesday.
Yeah, thank you. Yeah. All right, we'll see you
2 weeks from today.
In 2 weeks.
That's right.
I got that one right.
You're right. It's not the 4th Tuesday, it's the last Tuesday. There are 5 Tuesdays this month.
I made that mistake my first year here. I showed up and nobody was here.
Okay, if there's nothing else, do we have a motion to adjourn?
So moved.
Second, by David. All right, we're adjourned.